Hi guys, welcome to my channel and welcome to my very first video on YouTube. So today we're going to be making some spaghetti, some beef stew and some spinach that I'm going to be picking from this garden right here. I'm going to be looking for some nice, healthy, fat, green spinach, kind of like this one over here. So I'm going to find some few leaves from this plant right here. I'm going to leave some for next time. So this is the much I've gotten from this plant. I'm just going to add this amount to the pile that I had collected a little bit earlier. Yeah. So this is what I have found so far. I'm going to walk around and see if I'm going to find a little bit more to add to my pile. For these little ones, I will not touch them. I'm just going to let them grow and then I'm going to cut them when they are fully grown. I was also trying to find some spring onions to add to my meal today, but as you can see, my spring onions are so thin, so I'm not going to touch them. I'm just going to let them grow, and then once they're ready and ready to be harvested, I'm going to use them, and you will see how they turn out. The only one that I saw that was a little bit fat, I took this one. This one was a little bit, you see? It was a little bit fat, so I'm just going to take it because I don't want to risk it eaten by birds. The next thing I found was this green vegetable. From where I'm from, we call it mafake. I'm going to take those small leaves. You see the ones in the middle there? Those ones are a little bit soft. So these ones I'm going to add to my spinach just to add to some vegetables because they're there. And we don't want to risk having them eaten by birds, So this is all I have gotten, and if you ask me, this is such a good harvest. This is what I'm telling you guys. These birds are savages. Look at this. Kwanza, it's gone for the big fat leaves. The leaves that would have made such a big difference. But it's okay. It's okay. I mean, they're birds and birds are beautiful. So it's fine. We still have a lot more to use for our meals. So I'm back in the kitchen now and I'm going to start preparing my ingredients. They're already nicely cleaned and washed and dried, and now I'm just going to start cutting them. The first thing I did was to cut my red onions. I cut them into very fine pieces so they're almost the same size as my meat. The next thing I'm going to add to my onions, just because I like to mix onions when I can, just so I can try and get the different flavors that come from the different onions. I'm going to add my string onions or spring onions, depending from where you come from or from what you've been taught they're called. So whenever I can, I like to mix my onions, like I said, just so I can try to get some different kind of flavors. So the next time you can, try it. The next thing we're going to prepare for our meal are some bell peppers. I'm going to start with a green bell pepper. I'm going to try as much as possible to cut it into finely chopped pieces so I can try and get the same sized bell peppers as the ground beef. And this is purely out of preference. If you do not mind biting into your ingredients, either the green peppers or the carrots or the courgette or the eggplant, make them as big as you can. Some people don't enjoy biting into their ingredients, so they even prefer blending it. So do as your heart desires. So as you can see, I'm still trying to chop my green pepper as finely as I can. I will not use the whole of mine because I've seen that it's going to be too much for my food, so I'm just going to put some aside and I'm going to use them for my next meal. So onto my green pepper, I will add some red bell pepper. Again, I'm not going to use the whole of my red pepper, sorry, because I've realized that it's also going to be too much for my food. I'm also going to try as much as possible to cut it to the same size as I cut my green pepper. The next thing I'm going to add to my green pepper and my red pepper is my yellow one. Because, you know, I like to mix up things, so I'm also going to mix my peppers. So the next thing I'm going to put is my yellow pepper, and just like the green one and the red one, I'm going to cut into half, and the remainder I'm going to store it and use it for my next meal. So next, I'm going to be preparing my cloves of garlic and my piece of ginger. With this one, honestly, I just use my eyes to determine the amount that I'm going to use depending on the amount of food that I'm going to cook. You know, most times you read on recipes, use 2 cloves of garlic, and usually those 2 cloves of garlic don't really make a difference. So here's a pro tip, ladies and gentlemen. If you ever see somewhere that has been written 2 cloves of garlic, use 4. And if you ever see somewhere that is written 3 cloves of garlic, use 5. that is a pro tip. But no, that's just a joke. When it comes to deciding the amount of portions you want to use, when it comes to garlic and ginger, just use your eyes and your better judgment to decide the portions that you're going to use, depending on 1, the amount of food, and 2, the taste you envision for your food. Now that is a pro tip. That is the real pro tip for sure. So my ginger and garlic is ready. I'm just going to put it in that mashing device that you see on that right hand side corner, and I'm going to start mashing it because I don't like, as much as I like ginger and garlic in my food, I do not like to bite into big sized ginger or garlic. So as you see, I'm trying to vigorously mash my garlic and my ginger into my pot, and I'm going to use this for my food, and I will not bite into ginger or garlic anywhere, and that is what we want. So I decided to put my meat on the stove so that I can let it cook as I continue to prepare the rest of my ingredients, because we don't want to spend so much time creating this quick and easy meal. So how about we do some little thing called multitasking. So onto my hot oil, I have added my mixture of onions, my red onions and my green onions, and I'm just gonna place a lid on that and let it cook for a while as I continue to prepare the rest of my ingredients. So my onions are a little bit softer, so I'm going to add my ground up garlic and ginger to my onions and let it cook a while before I add my meat. So there goes my mixture of garlic and ginger. So I'm going to toss it a little bit so that it catches some oil. One more thing I forgot to mention is when you're doing this, cooking the minced meat, try as much as possible to add as little oil as possible, because there's nothing as, you know, not horrible as eating ground beef that has so much fat, especially if you're trying to make some stew out of it, because the stew is going to affect the taste and the texture of your food. So refrain as much as you can from adding so much oil. What you see me doing there is I'm trying to mix vigorously so I can try to separate the pieces of my ground beef. So I'm trying to beat them as much as I can to separate them, and it is proving to be a very hard task. So I'm just going to cover it with a lid and let it cook a while, and then I'm going to continue mixing it. So as my meat is getting cooked, I decided to go ahead and prepare my gourget. It's called zucchini in some places, so that's what I'm going to prepare. I'm also going to cut it into small pieces as I cut my previous ingredients. But to be honest, I don't mind biting into the gourgets because I like the texture and the taste that gourgets have, whether they're well cooked or just a little bit cooked. As you've seen, my gourget was actually quite big, so I'm just going to use some of it, and the rest I'm going to store and use for a later meal. So if you're wondering how to store some things like gourgets, carrots, cucumber, I suggest that you put those things in a plastic bag, and believe me, they are going to retain the same amount of freshness and rigidity that you bought them with. For things like green pepper, yellow or red pepper, I still don't know how to do it, because even when I store them in plastic bags, they still become squishy and flaccid. So if you have an idea or some few tips on how to store them, please let me know in the comments below. The next thing I'm going to add is some eggplant. So with this one, I'm going to add the whole bit because one, we like eggplants, and two, it's not too big, so I'm going to put the whole of it. If you ever struggle with cutting or chopping eggplants, I suggest that you put the inner side out. What I mean to say is let your knife cut the inner side out so that you're cutting the white part, because it's not as slippery as the outer dark part, and that way you're going to avoid the sliding of the knife and potentially cutting yourself. The next thing we're going to add to our food is some carrots. I like to add carrots in my ground beef because I like the texture, the color, and the taste it brings to my food. I mean, just putting the orange pieces of carrot in the ground beef just creates such a good different addition of color. So I decided to check on my meat and see if it is fully dry. I realized that it is not fully dry, so I'm just gonna tie and toss it a little bit so I can try and make sure that it is a little bit more detangled than it was before. I did not throw away that big piece of bone you see there because I wanted it to stay in so that it is going to help with the broth. So I'm trying to detangle it as much as I can. I'm going to place the lid on it and just let it continue cooking for a while and make sure that all the water from my meat is fully dry before we can start adding our ingredients. So the next thing I'm going to prepare is my tomatoes. I like to cut tomatoes very much because I think they cut very pretty. I mean, just look at that. Look at how pretty it is and enjoyable it is to cut tomatoes. The way they just cut, look. Hey, that is so fun. It is so fun. I could cut tomatoes the whole day. Look. So my meat is finally ready. As you can see, it's nice and dry, and now it's ready to start adding our ingredients. So the first thing I'm going to add to my meat is my tomatoes. So we're just going to put all the tomatoes that we've prepared into the pot. The next thing I'm going to add is my mixture of the green, yellow and red peppers. In they go to my pot. The next thing I'm going to add are my courgette and my eggplant. Look at the colors that has. Now finally I'm going to add my carrots. Look at that, nice, gorgeous, different colors. We have the orange, the red, the yellow, the green, the purple from the eggplant. It is so pretty. So I'm just giving it a nice toss just to make sure that everything is covered with oil before I put a lid on it and let it cook and soften. So try as much as you can to just, give it a toss. So to this I'm gonna add some salt. Try not to put so much salt. I'm gonna add some black pepper. Trying to focus. Some black pepper. Also try not to put so much. And finally some curry powder. If you wanted to stop at just the salt, that would be good enough, because we already have so much natural spices, and those, if you ask me, are the good stuff. So I'm just giving my food a nice little toss to make sure that all the ingredients are nicely, covered with spices. So I'm changing my stove to a low heat stove so I can put my water to the high heat stove so that I can bring my water for my spaghetti to a boil. My spices are nice and soft, so I'm just gonna add some warm water into my pot so I can have some stew. So as my water is boiling, I'm just gonna continue preparing my ingredients. What you see on my chopping board are the spinach that we took from the garden. I've just cut the upper part and threw that away. I'm gonna cut the rest in that size that you see. Again, if you don't like that big size, you can just reduce the size of the spinach to the size that you like. For me, I'm gonna use that size one because the leaves are just straight from the garden, so they're a little bit soft and they're young leaves, so I'm gonna use them just as they are. So my water is finally boiling, and what you want for your pasta or your spaghetti water is boiling water, as in you have to see bubbles. So I'm gonna add some salt to my water, and I'm gonna add some little bit of blue band, just to just try and add some flavor and some oomph to my spaghetti. So I'm gonna proceed to wait for my blue band to completely melt before I can add my spaghetti to my water. I don't have a specific way of how I cut my spaghetti. Sometimes I cut it into half, sometimes I cut it 3 times, sometimes I put it in whole. Today though, I decided that I was going to cut it into 2, so that's what I'm going to do. So I'm just trying to stir my water to make sure that all my butter / blue band is completely melted before I can add my spaghetti. So there we go. I'm cutting my spaghetti into half and putting it into the water. I'm going to use 1 whole packet of spaghetti. That is going to be enough for us today. So my spaghetti is nice and soft, so we're going to go ahead and prepare my spinach that is already completely cut. So into a hot pot with some oil, I'm going to add some freshly cut red onions. I'm just going to give them a while for them to cook. Then I'm going to add my tomatoes. I'm going to stir them a little bit and I'm going to cover them and let it cook for a while. Once they're cooked, I'm going to add some salt and then finally my spinach. This last part is going to take such a short time because vegetables do not take such a long time to cook. So right there I'm covering. My tomatoes are nice and soft, so I'm going to add my spinach into this. Before that, I'm going to put some salt. Just a little bit. Try not to put so much salt because all this goodness is going to be spoiled by too much salt. So I'm just trying to stir to make sure that my pot doesn't catch the tomatoes. Direct translation of staki nyanya zishike sufuria. So I'm just giving a stir. So I'm going to put my spinach inside. As you can see, my pot is too small for the spinach, so I'm just going to cover this and let it shrink, and then I'm going to add the rest of the spinach to this once it's covered. If you're wiser than I am, use a bigger pot. My pasta is ready and I've already started putting it aside. My meat is ready. Look at that goodness. Like I said, it was going to be rich because I used natural flavors. So I've started putting it on a plate. Just look at that. Try as much as possible to be as generous as you can because no one likes to eat dry pasta. So be generous with that stew, honey. Be generous. Put as much stew as you can. The camera is not doing justice to this food, honestly, because this food looked very nice and the smell, Finally, I'm just gonna put some spinach on that and we are going to enjoy. If you liked this video as much as I liked making it, kindly subscribe. Hit the subscribe button down below, turn on the notification bell, and watch out for some great videos to come. Until next time, bye!